Welcome to the Good Mood Show. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill. And if you were looking for a good mood every week, be sure to hit that subscribe button so that we can stay in touch every week with good feelings and good vibes. Today, we're talking with somebody who certainly knows how to turn moods around. It's Derick Johnson. Derick, welcome to the Good Mood Show.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here, Matt.
Oh, man, I'm so excited to have you here. Derick is a U.S. Army veteran. Thank you for your service, my man.
Thank you. Thank you.
He's a life coach. He's a trainer. He's helped over 500 clients and 50 companies go from just surviving to thriving through his coaching modalities and his marketing efforts. Derick was awarded Soldier of the Year for his battalion 3 times. He's received numerous awards for PT, and he took his leadership skills certifications and life experiences to help people take control of their mind and their body so they can thrive, not just survive. And that's what we're going to be talking about today is how to thrive and not just survive. And Derick, you had reached out to me and you said, man, I just love the concept of the Good Mood Show. I'd love to talk about doing a show about how people can feel happier from the inside out.
Yeah, for sure. So step one that I always recommend for everyone before they change their routine, update it, or add things to it would be to ask themselves, what are some things or situations that I could eliminate in my everyday life or even in my everyday process that doesn't really serve me? And it usually starts with what they eat and what they drink. Number two, it could be what they look at as social media. They wake up, they might lay in bed for 30 minutes before they actually get out of bed, and they're just scrolling and scrolling, and they have no control of what they're going to see. They might see a sad puppy video. They might see a bill is due in 2 days or 24 hours. So owning our energy and what we actually give energy to. So first, getting rid of some things that are not serving them. It could be digital, could be what they consume with food, drinks, maybe energy or people around them, or maybe they've had a pile of clothes in their house for 3 weeks and they just keep walking by it and it's irking them. And they're like, I'm going to get around that too Sunday, but they never do it. And it's just eating at them, plus other things in the garage, in the backyard, in the shed. So first, eliminate all that stuff before you try to change your routine or try to add stuff to it.
Yeah, I love everything that you have just said. And on my journey to good moods, I've read so many books.
Oh,
And
yeah.
every time I read one of these books and they talk about these influences in our lives, like what we drink, what we eat, what we consume on media, not just social media, but also the TV shows we choose to watch, the movies we choose to watch, uh,
Exactly.
and who we choose to hang around. Like all of these things are influencing our mood. And some of them are positive influences and some of them are negative influences. So I like that if we're looking to thrive in the world and not just survive, we really need to be conscious about what is influencing us. And is it a positive? Is it a plus? Or is it a minus? I know that you're super into fitness, and y'all, Derick has got an awesome ab workout we're going to be sharing with you. He's got a 6-pack. Derick is ripped. I'm gonna be taking his ab program, and if you're part of our newsletter, we're gonna send that out to you the week that this show launches. And if you want a copy of that and you're not part of our newsletter, you can go to goodmoodshow.com and sign up, and we'll send that out to you with the newsletter, or just reach out on the contact page. But exercise is a big piece to feeling good, and
Yes.
there's so much research that says it when you move your body, you feel better. So
Exactly.
is that part of the morning routine you usually start people with, or is that something you implement later with your clients?
Yeah, so I first try to eliminate those small things before we try to change anything, but I always recommend they work out in the morning. For some people, if they have multiple kids, they're in dad mode or mother mode and they just don't have that much time. Maybe for them, afternoon to decompress works as well. So I do want to say that I suggest the mornings to move the body. It could just be a walk. They walk the dog, walk around the block with the kids, go for a run. But if they don't want to do that or don't have time, or they're just not a quote unquote morning person, then they could do the afternoon and decompress, because that is something that some people look forward to. They've had a long work day. Then they're like, I can't wait to get in the gym or in my garage and just let loose. leave that on the table, and then actually be present at dinner with family or their loved ones. So my morning process is definitely consisting of doing one thing for the body and then one thing for the mind. So I'll either run to the gym, hit the weights, or I'll train in our building. And then two would be to visualize, meditate, or pray. All
Mm.
three are super effective, but for some, one of those resonates more than the other. So I really prefer to visualize along with praying. Meditation, I have nothing against it, but my mind just doesn't stop. So it's not as effective as a visualization. So visualizing your version 10.0. But I always recommend that people only choose two things, one for the body and one for the mind,
Yeah.
because it's very common where some people in society, they'll do 5 to 10 things in their morning routine just to hit that endorphin hit. It sounds good, it feels good, but by 10 a.m., they lose that umph and they're kind of just coasting until 5 p.m. They're like, all right, when can I clock out? When am I done? When can I close the laptop? So just choosing one or two things so that way we don't waste a ton of energy, because your morning routine should empower you and just gets you excited. So you're proactive rather than just reacting to every email, text, call, and you're like, can I just have a moment to myself? And it's usually because they haven't really had time to themselves. So at least have 30 minutes, a 30-minute window to take care of the body, open the mind. And that way you're proactive and excited about the day, opposed to hitting snooze 5 times, get the call, get the text, get the email, get stuck in traffic. And we're just like, can
You
I
know,
just have a couple
yeah,
minutes of my,
our whole day we're just reacting to
oh yeah,
we start out in a reactive mode, and then the stress and the pressure of everything that we have to do is already on us. And then
exactly.
we go and the kids wake up. I've got 4 kids. They wake up and
Oh, wow.
we gotta get breakfast ready. We got to get them off to school. And then I get into the office and I got all these people that need me, and they're asking me for all these things. I got meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. I'm like, man, I don't have time for lunch today. And then I get home and the kids are home and they're doing homework and it's like, daddy, 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 daddy. And so if I don't have this morning routine, I couldn't imagine who I would be after feeling like I was fighting fires all day.
Oh yeah. That negative energy would just infect everyone around you. Like, all right, let's not talk to dad today.
Yeah,
Or
and you know
don't even
what?
want to talk to my husband today.
Let's be
Everyone around you.
real. Some nights they're like, "Hey, let's give dad some space." All right.
Oh
And
yeah.
with the Good Mood Show, man, it's because I wasn't the master of good moods my whole life. Like, this is something that I've had to learn, I've had to work really hard at, and I've had to really study, and I've had to implement things like
Gotcha.
routines. And that's where this has come, is because I'm just a normal guy who struggled with bad moods. He came from a family that struggled with bad moods. And I wanted to learn, what can we do to feel good? Because I think that's the whole point. Like, if we're not
Oh
enjoying it,
yes.
what are we even doing with life? So I want
Exactly.
to go into some of these things that you do. I know you've turned a lot of people's lives around. Um, but let's talk about eliminating some of the media. So social media, it's so easy. Wake up, we got our routine on our phone. Grab your phone. I'm going to check email. I'm going to check Instagram. I'm going to check Facebook. I'm going to go on the internet and check my favorite website. And we just do this loop. How do
Oh
you
yeah.
how do you break people from starting their day on their internet loop?
I recommend that people are more intentional about what they do. So they could look at a 3-step or 5-step process. They're like, I walk to my bathroom, I do my thing, brush my teeth, I go to the kitchen, I hydrate. And so it sounds so simple, but the goal is, will I touch my phone besides turning off the alarm? If that individual has an issue with just flowing and going through their little loop, if they're utilizing social media for business or personal branding, things of that nature, then that person could say, hey, I'm going to post my morning routine. I'm going to create, but I'm not going to consume. Create more, consume less. So it depends on what medium somebody uses social media for. Some, they just use it to get entertained, to connect with loved ones, which is great. Others use it for business or personal branding. So if they do that, being more intentional about what we're going to do. So like my example is, in the morning, I'll take a picture of my dog eating and my glass on my water jug. And then I'll just write a quote of the day. But I don't absorb anything. I just post. I lay my phone down and I'll just sit there, have a moment, walk my dog, but I'm not actually looking at anything. I just post my process and that's it. Then later on after the gym, then everything starts flooding in. Then I'm like, okay, now I care to be social. Before that, I'm just like, leave me alone, everybody.
Yeah,
But
you needed to work on your mindset. And we
Yeah,
can't do that
100%.
if we're reacting to the stories in our social feeds or the stories we see on news, that on the websites that we go to, or reacting to our emails. So I bought an old school clock
Nice.
that
When you got to
has a,
slap off the loud
yeah,
radio or the
right.
eh.
So that my phone wasn't next to my bed. Like I moved my phone across the bedroom from me.
Love
So
it.
so that I can see the clock, because I had this excuse, oh, well, my phone's my clock. My phone's my alarm clock.
Oh
So
yeah.
I invested $9 in on Amazon and bought a clock that sits next to my
Good.
bed so that I can see what time it is. It's got an alarm on it. I could, set the alarm. And then at night, next to my phone where I set my phone down, I've got a note that says airplane mode. And
Good.
I turn my phone on airplane mode every night as part of my night routine. Is I turn my phone on airplane mode. So in the morning when I walk by it, there's mornings I grab it, but I have no new notifications that have popped up.
Good.
I can't go on my email. I can't open it says, hey, disable airplane mode. And so that's a reminder from my wiser self the night before that I don't want to get sucked into all that stuff that
That's
morning.
amazing.
And then I'm not in touch with the phone. And I love what you said, man. It's your morning routine is so simple. I love it. It's one thing for your body, one thing for your mind.
Yeah, so a lot of things nowadays, they just overwhelm people. I feel like in the information age, it's amazing. There is a positive. We can learn anything. You can hop on YouTube for the weekend and almost feel like an expert doing something. So if people suck at building stuff, they can literally learn how to build anything in their backyard or in their car. We've all watched a how-to video before, doing things around the house. So with that being said, there's a ton of information, but also people are overwhelmed because there's a lot of extreme information. An example could be, and this is no offense to these people that do this, but one person is pushing eat liver only. Don't eat vegetables. This person's saying go vegan. This person's saying do this. This person's saying you're going to end up in the hospital if you do that. This person says you need all these different apps for productivity. So that individual who's already stressed and doesn't know where to start, they hear all this extreme stuff and they're like, which one is the best? What do I do for my situation or my body type or my mindset? I feel overwhelmed. So I'm going to go back to my loop opposed to like taking action on any of this because it's too much at once or it's too extreme.
Mm.
Where I always like to recommend to go back to the basics. The water, have I gone on walks? Have I consistently worked out for weeks on end, as in 4 days a week, 4 days a week minimum? And also, do I have control of my time? And do I even spend time in nature and I'm actually present? Like a lot of people, they're rarely present nowadays because of these apps, because of laptops, computers, everything else. And if they think about it, when was the last time that he or she sat outside and just looked at a bird for 2 minutes or a squirrel or just watched their dog play for 5 minutes and literally just like stared at it or looked at the ocean, wherever they live, whatever is in their vicinity, in their environment, but actually be present? It's so rare to see that because nowadays we're glued to our phone. Nobody's present. They might be at the beach, but they're literally just doing the same cycle that they do on the couch, but they're not actually enjoying the views or being present with their loved ones. So I just like to focus on what can we do to prepare the day for our body, mind, but also what are we going to do when we're more present? And are we ever even present? Because that's the scary thing. You go out to eat, the families, the couples, everybody's like this, iPads, phones, laptops, and nobody's actually having conversations anymore, which I mean, sometimes we need that because of business, but if we really zoom out and just look at the family and relationship aspect, it's sad to see that nobody's ever present. Nobody has real conversations, or they hang out with loved ones. And once they leave, they'll send you like 5 paragraphs of what they thought. And you're like, we were hanging out for 3 hours. And now you're texting me paragraphs. Like, why
Now,
didn't you
now,
just
now
speak?
you're telling me, why don't you tell
Yeah,
me we were
like use your words. What are we doing here?
there? Yeah. So I was in a bad mood last night, and
Okay.
um, I found myself on my phone doing the loop of all the apps, and it wasn't improving my mood at all. And I did what you just had suggested. I walked outside,
Awesome.
no phone. I left it so I couldn't continue to just stay in the cyber world, and I took a walk outside. And
Good.
I got to this spot that had a little bench to sit at, and I sat there and then I watched my breath
Nice.
and brought myself back to presence. And then I was like, walking through these trees, and I was like really looking at the nature that was there. And this wasn't intuitive. I've studied this. Like I've known fresh
Yes.
air, trees, nature, watching your breath, becoming present, getting out of your thoughts in your mind, that these things bring you back to a good mood. Yeah. And then I came back and I was in a better mood. Not 100%. I had some pretty
Yeah.
news yesterday. And so sometimes like we also have to have some grace on ourselves. So I woke up this morning and I was still a little agitated about some events in the day yesterday at work. And 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 my wife had to fly out of town this morning, and I've got all four kids to myself. So my routine was shifted. I still wanted
Yes.
I still wanted to work out, and I did. For me, I meditate and pray. So I woke
Awesome.
up. I do water first, hydration. I have a half a lemon and a glass of water with a little bit of
Good.
salt. And then I prayed, and then I meditated, and then I did a workout. And so, but I kind of jammed it all together. And before my workout is over, all the kids are waking up, and I'm straight into, oh man, okay, breakfast. And you know what though? Like getting back on that routine, by the time I got in the office, I was in a good mood again. So
Amazing.
so these routines, what you're talking about, what you teach, like it works. Otherwise, I could have been in a funk for days. When I was younger and I didn't have these
Yeah.
routines, I would literally be in a funk sometimes for 4 or 5 days straight.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things I like to do with people or even friends in general is I ask them, even when they're in the moment, I just ask them directly, how long will you allow yourself to be in this state? And it catches people off guard. So like one of my buddies, he's very similar. He's just angry at everything. He's like, man, F this, the government, and blah, 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 taxes. And I'm like, dude, I get it. We all feel the same. Chill out. Then I just ask him like, how long are you going to allow yourself to stay in this state? And like they'll start shaking their head, looking angry, or start laughing and say 2 minutes, 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks. But if you ask somebody that, it catches them off guard, but you're saying it from the kindness that you just want them in a better state. But if people start to give themselves a limit, so I have this thing I call the 10-minute window. 10 minutes. If you need to cry, cry. If you need to grab the steering wheel in the car and yell, if you need to yell into a pillow, do that. If you just need to sit outside with nature, an example of what you did last night, that individual could do that. If they need to pray, they can pray. But within 10 minutes, if they have the ability and the skill to come back down to feel like a smooth wave rather than being too high up or too far down, like many people, they're always on an emotional roller coaster. He or she might be super happy or super low. There's no in between. There's like excited about life and love it, or F this, don't want to be here. So if people can have more control of the time limit that they put on themselves with how quick they can come back up or maybe go back down, just to be on that smooth equilibrium, to be present and just calm. So if they can give themselves a 10-minute, 20-minute, whatever they want to choose window, they just have to do something that's going to put them in a better state. Sometimes myself, like the past army stuff or past childhood trauma will pop up. And what I'll do, I'll just breathe. Sometimes I'll just like start barking, like literally just start barking like a dog, just to like hype myself up. But it's more so a mental interruption, like the equivalent of a mental air horn. So if somebody barks or if they clap in their face, and all it is an interrupter, like, all right, we got to shake it out, move my shoulders, move the body. Besides that, laughter can help as well. Like I'll watch mindless YouTube videos for 5 minutes. If I feel myself getting off, I'm like, I just need to laugh at something stupid. And I watch it, I'm like, all right, I'm good. And then I just get back to it. So sometimes we have to just interrupt that with something more empowering or moving the body. But going back to the window is if people can really be hyper intentional about that and say, I identify that I'm angry. What is making me angry? All right, this happened at work. Okay, understandable. So, what can I do to release this? Do I have a punching bag in the garage? Do I need to grab a pillow? Do I just need to go outside? Do I just need to pet my dog and just like be present? Do I need the touch of my kids, like just a family hug or a group hug? Sometimes if we just really think about it, what we need in that moment, it could be effective. So, like my example, when I'm angry as well, I don't want to be touched. Like my girlfriend's like, hey, let me give you a hug. I'm like, not right now. My dog comes up to me, not right now. So I go outside, I look at the water, breathe, gratitude, come back in and say, okay, we're good to go. But again, it's within
And
10
that's
minutes,
what
and that is a test.
that's what that workout was for me today, because I woke up and I still hadn't shook it off. A lot of times, going to bed, I'll wake up just because I'll wake up feeling better. But I
Yeah,
was like, no, I've got to go hard in a workout today. And I was slinging some heavy weights and I was working pretty intense in that half hour
awesome.
to see if, like you were saying, barking real loud, like sometimes just going super hard can
Yeah.
shift things too. And I think that was a big key for me shifting my attitude today, is that sometimes you just got to work yourself.
Yeah. And sometimes we have to earn that confidence and that calmness. Like not everyone's going to wake up super happy. Life's not all sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns. Some days we just have a day. But if we can control it, those are the key days that really build our character. If we're like, all right, we have this family dinner of 20 planned today at 7, 6 o'clock is here. I don't want to cancel on everyone last minute. It's like, what can we do within 30 minutes of leaving the house to get in a better state? And those are key moments, because most people, they would say, oh, I'm sick. Hey, I'm going to meet you
Uh-huh.
guys next time. But if
Yeah.
we can show up and force ourselves to literally make somebody's day and ask them about what they love, by the
Mhm.
time we're driving home, we might just laugh and we're like, wow, I was almost about to bail on them, or I was almost about to just be there miserable.
I love that you brought that up. This has been a big topic on my mind recently, has been how much people are canceling social engagements. And there's I think more social anxiety because we've come out of COVID,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we were all isolated for so long. And there's more cancellations since we've come out of COVID than there were pre-COVID cancellations. And
Yes.
I just had Sean Acor give a keynote speech, and I attended it. He wrote The Happiness Advantage, and he said the number one predictor of happiness was social connection. So
Oh, yeah.
leading up to the family dinner with 20 family members, we're anxious about doing it. And then usually by the time we're leaving, we're so freaking glad we went, because
Oh, yeah.
that social connection felt super good, because it's the number one indicator of happiness. So I've had anxiety heading into those meetings before, like big work meetings with a lot of people, or big family gatherings, or big social events. And one of the things that has helped me in those moments is to say, right now I'm making this about myself.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to be there. I don't want to expend the energy. It's all about me, 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 me. And so if I'm choosing to go, I typically say, okay, I'm going to make this about everybody who I'm going to impact there. How could
Oh,
I
yeah.
how could I have a conversation with people and fully be present with them today? How could I give them my full attention? How could maybe I listen with two ears and try to be somebody that maybe is giving them more attention than they've gotten from anybody this week? And when I flip
Exactly.
down to saying, how can I make a difference in their life, I typically have less angst about going to those events.
Yeah, and the cool thing about what you mentioned is if people ask better questions, they actually use less energy in that day or that situation that they don't want to be in. And then they just absorb and they're like, wow, I said like 10 words and I was there an hour. I just asked good questions. They're like, man, I really like this guy. I don't know what he does, but I like this guy. I do that all the time some days when I don't feel like talking and I'm invited somewhere. I just ask questions. I'm like, what is your favorite thing you do? Excuse me. What is your favorite thing about what you do? And it really catches them off guard, opposed to like, hey, what do you do? How's the weather where you're at? Blah, 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 blah. Instead of the generic questions, I challenge people to come up with very interesting questions. And that is one they could use is, what is your favorite thing about what you do? Or what is the biggest challenges you've had in the past 60 days and how did you overcome it?
Oh,
Just
dang. I love
catching people off guard,
Man, I
just
love it.
making
I
them
love
think.
these questions. Yeah.
Because I do this a lot with my clients that actually have social anxiety, and we have a list of questions, and the intent is if you can get somebody to do this, to the listeners, I'm like looking up to the side, if you can get somebody to think, the attention is off of you, you can chill out, the anxiety goes down, you can see that they're actually thinking and they're like, you know what, it's this and this, and they start elaborating, and they stop, the individual that has the anxiety stops feeling like all pressure is on them or all eyes. Like an example could be maybe they had a zit, maybe they look tired, maybe they were coughing all morning and they feel like their voice sounds weird, whatever it is, and that they think that everyone's looking at or listening to, if you can make someone look up and think, all the attention is off of you. And then they start to chill out. And then they're like, wow, this actually feels really good. We're in flow state right now. And by the time they leave, each person's like, hey, I appreciate this conversation, because meaningful conversations are so rare. So asking good questions is like a cheat code for anxiety nowadays.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said, everything that you just said, and meaningful conversations are so rare. So the more we distance ourselves from our phone, and we actually practice this one thing for our mind, one thing for our body each morning, the more we're able to, actually have a meaningful conversation with somebody we see that day.
Oh,
The other
yeah.
thing that you and I talked about before we jumped on the show was you're really good at reframing the way you react to things and situations and people. Why is that so crucial that we reframe our reactions to things that happen each day?
That's a great question. So I am a big component of focusing and pinpointing on people's patterns, even my own. So my old pattern, my younger version is, so I grew up with a father who's a farm boy, African American, in the army, 25 plus years, gung ho, hard work, discipline. My mother's German. If you guys know about Germans, they're very strict, very structured. Everything they say sounds aggressive. So those are my parents, very disciplined and structured. So Black farmer dad with the hard work army and the structured German mother. So discipline came natural. But on the flip side, the communications and like the family dynamic of love and affection, that was never there. So I had to learn that. So I used to just always be that teen who's quiet and shy and kept to myself, really reserved. I don't want to be at these events. I'm just going to sit in the corner. So the way that I got myself out of it was literally just asking people questions about them. Everyone's favorite thing to talk about is themselves. And it doesn't mean we're selfish, but let's just say you love guitars. If somebody asks you about Fender guitars, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, in 2016, blah, blah. Like you're going to tell endless stories about Fender guitars and Rolling Stones, and your grandpa had this album. But if you can have a conversation and a good question lined up for an individual to make them think, that is going to be the power. But going back to your question in regards to the responses is going to be your pattern. When it comes to your pattern, do you normally get quiet? Do you normally get angry? Do you normally want to like walk out of the room? What is your normal reaction to your family, to your boss, to your client? If we can just push pride and ego away for a moment and say, what is my reaction to said situation? How do I normally react? And if we can have our power back within us and say, I'm not allowing him, her, or this situation or this bill to control my reaction. I have the power here. So I'm just going to stay neutral, or I'm going to be happy, or I'm going to agree. Whatever it is, it's going to be something that relates to you, not wasting all of your energy and allowing you to give somebody else your power. So whatever the scenario is, pausing for a moment, breathing, and saying, hey, normally I would react like this. Let me just react in a better way where we're not expelling so much energy and aggression, whatever that feeling is that that individual has.
And that's again being conscious.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
well, we're unconscious all the time. You know,
Yes. Everything is on autopilot.
everything's on autopilot. So my autopilot pattern, I'm thinking about yesterday when I got so agitated at work, was to be defensive.
Okay.
I got specifically every single quarter, I ask everyone in my company to submit anonymous feedback about what they like and what they don't like.
Okay.
It is the craziest practice to do this every quarter. Like you really have to like fortify your mindset to hear anonymous feedback from, yesterday, I think it was 18 people who work with me who submitted this anonymous feedback. You got to have super tough skin, because every day I show up to work and I give everything I've got to make this the best place for people to work. It's like
Awesome.
my blood, sweat, and tears to be the best possible place for people to work. And then when the people there have negative feedback, it's like, man, after I'm doing everything so then I got defensive. And so my unconscious pattern was to be defensive and say,
Okay.
you obviously don't see how hard we're working to make your life as good as it can be. And
Yeah. And
and then I'll get combative. And so
gotcha.
unconsciously, if I'm not conscious to, like, if I had been, typically before I go into feedback, I do fortify my mind and say, I'm ready to receive some feedback that's going to help our company get better. I'm putting
Yeah.
on my thick skin. I understand that there's going to be some things I don't want to see. I'm asking for it. If I'm the CEO of the company, I don't have to ask for this anonymous feedback. I'm doing it because it's going to help me get better.
Yes.
Yesterday, we just kind of jumped into it, and I didn't have any. I wasn't conscious. I was ready to just read whatever was written, and then I just reacted to my old patterns from growing up, which was get defensive and then be combative. So
Okay.
what would you recommend about that?
I appreciate you sharing that. So with those scenarios, I'm a big component, not saying the anonymous approach is not good, but I would have like a team powwow where everyone sits together. If everyone's there in the office in person, if it's on Zoom, that's fine as well. But if it's in person, everybody sits there. And then you have one person that is going to be the guinea pig. So he or she, you tell them is like, hey, could you just start it off? If you have one person that starts it off, because if you start it off, not everybody might be as comfortable to divulge. But if you have one person that's a guinea pig, which might be like your right hand guy that started the company with you, and you're like, hey, could you elaborate on the positive and then say some feedback of improvements? So I would flip it. And many people have pros versus cons, or they have positives and negatives. I would flip the script and name it positives and improvements. So there's nothing seen as negative. So if that individual stands there first and says, hey, I love XYZ with the program, with the CRM, but it would make my job easier if we had this and this, or I think Joey needs more training, which is why his numbers are slacking. Would you agree? And everybody's like, yeah. And then you slowly open up and people will start to feel more comfortable because somebody divulged and they're starting with the positives and then saying, I feel like we can improve XYZ. And then they sit down, everybody claps for them, and then the next person goes. It's very old school, but I feel like that uncomfortable cringe feeling gets left out of the room for everyone, yourself included. But it's an interesting approach because by the time you get to the last person, they actually feel calm to stand up because they're like, wow, nobody's yelling, nobody's like super angry or offended. So let me divulge what it is as well. And just by having that in-person interaction can help a ton. And then by the end, as a CEO or the leader, we could say, hey, I just want to applaud everybody. Everybody give yourself a round of applause. I know in the beginning, this is probably super uncomfortable. I was sweating, my palms were heavy, knees are weak. But right now, I learned a lot from you guys. So here's what I wrote down. Bum, 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 feed it
Yeah.
back to them and say, how could we work on this? And then do a round robin with the team and say, let's do a round robin on said topic. What do you think would help Jimmy? Hey, I think we should do this. Hey, I think, and then get everybody as a collective unit to give feedback. And then by the end, you're like, all right, so for next month or next quarter, we're going to focus on these things. How does that sound? Everybody's like, yeah. So at that point, everybody had some input and like the end result is much more positive and calmer. And everybody walks out like, huh, that was interesting. Even though they walked into the room with their butt cheeks clenched and like, oh, what's about to happen? Matt's going to rip me a new one.
Right. Right. No, I like that. And people will be nicer to your face.
Yeah.
They definitely take the license to tell you how they really feel in anonymous feedback.
Yeah, for sure. And
And
if,
which is why I typically have really thick skin and I typically can handle it well. But the reason I go with the anonymous feedback is because I really want to know how they feel without them sugarcoating it with how they would say it to our face. And even in a group setting where everybody's sharing, is some people just won't ever say. Some people's personality is they don't want to make anyone feel bad.
yeah, for
So they'll
sure.
never tell you what's on their mind, really. But I'm like more committed to the success of the company than I am to feeling good all the time
Yeah,
about
exactly.
about it. So that's why I go for the punishment. But what would you say to me, who's my initial reaction, my unconscious reaction is to get defensive and then want to be on the attack? Like how would you help me shift that?
Great question. So, depending on what the specifics were on the feedback that you got, I would pause and say, is that something that is my fault? So as a leader, being able to push that anger, pride, ego, whatever the emotion is, yes, it's always going to be there for a minute. But once we just breathe and we say, okay, did I not give him or her the tools that they needed? Or do we have an outdated system? Or is this and this? Just like asking yourself those questions before we feel like we need to erupt or find who is Mr. Anonymous, huh? Is that Jimmy? Like before the alpha male pride and ego jumps in, just pausing and saying, have I not given somebody the tools that they need? Because sometimes the quiet one is scared or nervous to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I feel like the training was 2 weeks and I needed 2 months. Like this is why I suck at XYZ, whatever the role is. But sometimes it's usually coming from the quiet person that is scared to make anybody else uncomfortable. But in that regard is just me personally, and this is past military and like business in general, is I've always hated the up in the air, like trying to figure out who's this coming from? Or I'm not saying you walk on eggshells, but I've just always hated the up in the air feeling. And I like to just address it and say, hey, I see somebody mentioned we had an issue with this. How do you think we could resolve this? And going back to the scenario I mentioned is having that group talk. And nobody has to say, hey, it's me, but you could at least have a conversation and give some feedback and do the whole round robin where that one person doesn't feel singled out because everybody did give some feedback, but
But
you
then
might
as a
still be able to read who it is, but
in a group, we can
first
solve
pausing.
together. Yeah, in a group, we can
Yeah,
solve together as a group and get them to be part of the solution
exactly.
rather than just pointing out the problem. Yeah, and I know you've helped a lot. Like you're a life coach who's made a big difference in a lot of people's lives. Would you mind sharing some of the stories you've had with some people that you've really turned around, and what was it that clicked for them where they had that shift?
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of anxiety, I have a client that worked with me during quarantine. So she's living in Florida and she had crippling anxiety to the point where she couldn't go shopping by herself or anything in public without being on the phone with someone. And she had a best friend, and the best friend was too nice to tell her, like, hey, stop calling me when you're shopping. I understand you have anxiety, but I have a life as well. Like I have kids, a dog, and work and all that. So that is something that she wanted to work on. And we came to find out that it was always based off of her childhood, where people were always telling her, hey, shut up, don't speak until spoken to, and all that. So, like, that anxiety came from that, but also because of how she viewed herself. So how she viewed herself was she gained some weight during quarantine. And so that lack of confidence increased the childhood feeling and skyrocketed that. So we built the confidence within how she felt about herself, physically and mentally. And then I gave her a challenge to go to the places where she already knows people. So her favorite restaurant, favorite bar, wherever her favorite places were. I'm like, all right. So the goal is you're going to go there for lunch where there's less people. We're not going to go at 7 p.m. where you go in there and there's packed house and your anxiety goes out the roof. So she went there around 11 to 12, went there for lunch. And I said, hey, do you know the bartender or do you know the server? Okay, sit in their section, have a conversation. And the whole approach with her was to not be on the phone. And so we started doing that. And then nowadays she can go wherever and doesn't have that crippling anxiety to feel like she has to be on the phone to have somebody with her. And it all started within how she viewed herself. And that's usually where the anxiety comes from a social aspect, is that individual doesn't like something about themselves, whether it's finances, their body, their skin, like something there, but they won't address it. And that's usually the first step to getting rid of that anxiety. Because it's not that everybody just sucks at speaking and communication. We were all good at it as teenagers and kids, but something happened along the lines where we saw ourselves differently. So that is one example. Another example is a client who he was an alcoholic and he had multiple divorces because of his alcoholism. Everything would be good. And then once business stress got to him, he would drink more, he would say things that shouldn't be said or get physical. And he was just sick and tired of that. So overcoming that and his kids coming back into his life and forgiving him, he forgave them, vice versa. It was just amazing to see. So everything on a deeper personal level, rather than just I bench X amount or she has a bigger butt or he does this. My favorite part has always been the positive ripple effect of people around them that feel and can see the changes within them, where they're like, wow, he or she's carrying themselves in a different way. The kids want to start working out. Their wife wants to start cooking the meals that he's eating. And everybody's kind of coming up together, which my opinion has always been we should all want to win together. Because what is better than your wife and your kids all on the same page when you're all trying to improve? It's the best thing, rather than relationships where somebody's the total opposite. And 10 years later, like, we have different versions of success.
Yeah.
I think we did the wrong thing. But yes, those are some examples that have always really made me proud. And in hindsight, I feel like anytime that we're able to help somebody else with their issues, we're essentially healing our inner child. Like whatever trauma somebody else had, if we can show up better for others and truly make them happy and proud, we're fulfilling whatever issues we had growing up. But it's a win-win for both.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So when we show up for other people, we're healing our inner child that needs healing. And I think we're all
Oh yeah,
connected. I think we're all connected. So if we see someone else who's suffering, we're supposed to see that to see if we can show up to be there for them, even if it's
yeah,
just even if it's just to listen. As
exactly.
we heal them, I think we raise the consciousness of everyone that's around.
100%. And it's usually that uncomfortable feeling right before. But once we just go speak to that person in public, once we call that friend, call that family member, our conscience is telling us, hey, you should go do that thing. If we start to do those things, it's amazing what happens. Things fall into place. They feel better. We feel better. And we're like, wow, this took less energy. Like I've been avoiding said conversation for so long. And I've had this crippling feeling like, just go attack that thing so we get rid of that feeling.
One of the core values in my family is to help instantly.
I love it.
And it's because if we think about, should I help this person? Am I close enough to them? Do we really know each other like that? Usually we're going to talk ourselves out of it.
100%.
If we see someone who needs help and in the mantra is help instantly, and you just, no, I'm just going, I'm just going to go help. There's no time to think. It's just like programmed that I help instantly. Then you don't stop yourself from going out and being a blessing to somebody's life. And, you know, it's very rare that you go to help somebody and then they bite your head off. Like, you shouldn't be here. It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
it's like almost always they're grateful that you're there trying to help, you know, and it's, I can't make all situations better, but I certainly can tell people, you know, I don't want you to feel the way that you're feeling, but I understand that you're feeling this way. You
Oh
know,
yeah. And if people can do that in person, sorry to cut you out. I just want to say for the genuine compliment in public, that's so rare. Everybody's been in a bad moment or a bad day where the grandma in Publix, the lady at Target, the little kid that said the most random stuff just made you smile, made you laugh, and then you're like, how did they even approach me? I had RBF the past 6 hours and this person just spoke to me, but we've all received it. So if we can give that and give somebody a genuine compliment about their shirt or open up a conversation at the grocery store. Hey, why'd you get that pasta over that pasta? They end up telling you about the dish their grandma made and all this stuff. And you had a moment, you go back to the car and you're like, wow, I didn't realize I needed that. Maybe they needed that. But just doing that for more people, especially when you don't feel like it, that's a real challenge. When you're pissed off, try your hardest to speak to the guy behind the counter and say, hey, how are you doing today, man? Even
yeah.
though 2 minutes before that, you're pissed off having a bad phone call, like those moments really test who we are because we can change our mood so quick and make their day. And then we're like, wow, normally I'm pissed off for 2 hours. I was for 5 minutes. This is interesting.
Yeah, it's going back to what we started with, that these social connections are the key to good moods, or really the key to happiness. It's the social connections with people we don't even know, the barista at the coffee shop, the person at the
Yeah.
grocery store, you know, just getting out of our own head and into relationship with the world and interacting with the world. I also love that you said we can influence the people around us. So if we can get our kids to work out with us, or if we can influence our family members to eat a little healthier, man, so last weekend I love when the kids work out with me. Like
Nice.
I incentivize with candy. I'm like, man,
Good.
okay, if you do this workout, you're picking two pieces of candy out of the dessert bowl.
There
And
you go.
sometimes that's, usually they just want to work out with me just because they want me to be proud of them. But last week, all four of them joined me for the workout, and they got so silly in the middle of the workout. And it was so intense. The program we were doing was so intense. I was like, kids, I need you to actually focus. I need you to focus, or else there's going to be no dessert. It did not do it. They kept being silly. And then I lost my cool, and I'm like, you guys can't work out with me today. And
Yeah.
then I'm like, go watch TV, right? Like that's also one of the things. If I'm working out, they can't watch TV because I want to incentivize them to get started.
Oh yeah.
And then I felt like I let them down. I'm like, man, I just shooed that they were all here, even though they were being crazy. and
Yes.
they weren't taking it serious. I feel like I let them down. And you know, I didn't feel as good about myself for shooing them off that day. But you know, how do you usually get families to start recruiting their family members in to get healthy with them on this journey?
That's a great question. So energy, just like you, I believe energy and vibrations are real. So if they see you proud and happy, and if they truly love you, they'll slowly want to join and level up as well. So I would, step one, show up as the best version of you. Because when they see that, they get inspired, even if they don't say anything. Weeks or months later, they might be like, hey, Matt, I know we didn't talk Thanksgiving, but just want you to know I lost 10 pounds. You got me focused, but I never wanted to say nothing. But hey, sometimes that happens where they just see us vibrating much higher. So showing up as the best version. Another thing could be to create a competition. Everybody loves a little friendly competition. That is one of the most easiest and effective ways to get people, whether it's kids or anybody, to join, especially if like they're all playing around, or even like the cousins that are in their 30s or 40s, everybody's laughing, say, hey, you know what? Let's start a competition. I think you would last 60 seconds holding a plank, or you would do 45. What do you think? And flip it on them. They're like, oh, let's do it. And they get in a plank and
And
you can focus for a bit, and they're all shaking and struggling, trying to fight it. And you're like, all right,
my
I can focus on my
yes,
workout.
yesterday at the end of my workout yesterday, my 10-year-old, she's in gymnastics. She's like, plank competition now.
Good.
I'm like, let's do it. And we got to 2 minutes. I wanted to drop. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna keep going. We got to 3 minutes. My whole body was shaking. And I'm like, man, I can't lose to my 10-year-old right now. And and then she dropped at 3:15 and I dropped at 3:16. And it was the best. It was the best because I didn't want to lose the very first time she challenged me. Right.
Oh yeah.
I still gotta be strong dad. But man, she's got me next time. I'm telling you.
3 minutes is no joke. Honestly, 1 minute. Most people can't even hold it for a minute. So I applaud y'all. 3 minutes.
Dude, this girl, like, I'm sure every night she's gonna be start doing planks on her own, like just working up. She's
Oh
she
yeah.
she said, Dad, 2 weeks, we're back on. And so she's
He's prepping.
she's prepping. She's prepping for 2 weeks. I'm gonna have to hold a 5 minute plank to beat her. I know.
Oh yeah. That's good. She has that killer instinct. I like it.
Well, man, Derick, this has just been the best conversation. You know, I know you've shared some exercise material with us. We're going to send out to our newsletter, but there's going to be people here that just really love your vibe, love what you're doing, might want to get some more information from you. How would people reach out and get in touch?
Great question. So they could find me on social media. It's Fit with Derick 2, the number 2, Fit with Derick 2. And my whole intent with social media is to plant seeds, make people think, call them out. Well, I'm like that best friend that's going to speak up when people are slacking. They're like, hey, I don't really like him, but he's the only one in my life that'll say, hey, you should be doing this because he wants to see me win. It's my whole intent. So they come across that, they see some stuff that maybe makes them uncomfortable, but I know they'll be thinking, they're like, hey, you know what? He did call me out on that. But that's my whole intent, make people think and make them level up so they're better for their people. That's all it is. If you're better, your people are better. And as kids, as adults, we don't do what we are told, we all do what we see. So if they see you vibing high, they want to vibe high as well. They see you working out. So that's my whole intent with it.
So I'm going to follow you on social media, Fit with Derick 2.
Yes.
Fit with Derick too. Okay. And then I'm going to be watching how insane your fitness is. And I'm going to be like, okay, all right, I gotta catch up here. Hey, don't call me out too hard though, man.
Hey, my whole thing is a competition. My favorite thing to do is just post my morning routine, get up every day at 4, not as a challenge, but just to show people. And they see the consistency and they're like, he's going to miss Sunday. He didn't miss. This motherfucker's crazy. Like, that's what I like to do. I get in people's minds.
Oh man, I love it. Well, hey, thank you so much for bringing your wisdom
I
and your,
appreciate it, Matt. Thank you for having me.
and guys, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.